Now, other alternatives can be things like working in some sort of police and or other government type entity. I mean, there's lots of different agencies that can fall under that, even postal work, just because it's a government agency. That can be indicated there. You also have Jupiter in the second house, so that can show a major increase through your own personal resources in your second house. Potentially even things like stocks and investments. Now, we like to see a strong Taurus when we're looking for investments. And really, with Venus also ruling the sign of Taurus and Venus being strong, investments are something that may be good for you in the long term. But it may come potentially even like a little later in life, investments in that sort, because we've got Jupiter there retrograde. So it's more of a take time aspect. Also, in looking at the second house, other careers that could be indicated are any sort of hidden or secret type careers. Scorpio tends to be things that are like hidden underground. Sometimes it can be mining, sometimes it can be private eye, investigative work, research work. It can even be as simple as just uncovering, like investigative research or investigative journalism, stuff like that. But usually with Scorpio, we see things that are digging up hidden information and somehow finding ways to earn our income off of that. Now, when looking at it from a personal worth point of view, we can see that Mars is not in an incredibly strong place. And actually, if anything, Mars finds its value based upon our home and family, one of the parental figures approving of what we do. So I wouldn't be shocked if your early career choice may have even been influenced by a parent. They may have pushed you towards what you chose, or somehow when you were young seeded you towards those thoughts. Also, looking at Pluto's placement in Virgo, it very much denotes the need for service. Virgo is the natural sixth house. It's the natural sign of service. So kind of feeling the need to be in service to the community to find your own value. With that, there's an element of needing to learn to find your own value, whether others approve or not. Now, another note on Jupiter in Scorpio. You may find yourself drawn to taboo topics. You may enjoy listening to crime, true crime sorts of things, or enjoy watching like the cops show where there's police chases. Or maybe you may find yourself being drawn towards occult or hidden studies, things that are not quite acceptable in the public eye or like in the very traditional type family perspective that it looks like your family may have had based on your chart. So, wouldn't surprise me if you kind of felt almost like a level of guilt or interest, excitement in researching and discovering things that were not quite acceptable or normal, or if you just at least were very drawn to hidden things. It can even be like a fascination with serial killers, or wanting to know and understand the psychology behind people that make these very bizarre life choices. cults, things like that. Now, Jupiter in the second can also be indicative of large food consumption, like overeating, finding yourself being an emotional eater, someone that eats to self-soothe or just for the sheer joy of it, but has a tendency to struggle with limiting oneself. So keep that in mind if that happens to be a struggle for you. I can offer some remedies that may help with limiting that over Jupiterian nature. But kind of common, Jupiter in the second house, to struggle with limiting oneself in consumption of food and potentially even beverages that are detrimental to our health in the long run. One more quick note with that, because Jupiter is the ruler of your sixth house, which rules your daily routines and your health, Jupiter being in Scorpio is not the strongest placement. That doesn't mean that you will ultimately always struggle with willpower and or overeating or over drinking, but it does mean that you're going to have to work harder to establish a routine and maintain it. So someone that has a strong sixth house ruler may naturally be very organized and disciplined and able to limit themselves easily. You may have to work harder at that. And again, if you've already achieved this and you've already gotten your willpower down and this is not a struggle, then gloss over my words. But just know that with this sort of placement, it's very possible that it is a feeling of you having to work harder than most people to limit yourself, especially with Venus as the chart ruler as well. Venus loves more excess. Like it's a planet that's all about beauty and whatnot, but it because it likes beauty and yummy things and good textures and beauty and all these things, it's going to also want more and more and more of that. So those two planets can definitely make it a little harder for you to limit yourself. But once you correct that, you can actually end up being better at it than those that have the natural inclination, because those with the natural inclination to limit themselves usually end up going on benders at some point in time. So you've got the potential to overcome any areas where you may feel weak with your will in regards to daily routines and health and food consumption and all that stuff. So our next planet there is Neptune. And while it's in a different sign, the sign of Sagittarius, at 0 degrees of that sign, which makes it very strong, it's still there in our second house conjunct Jupiter. So what this can do is make it harder to see yourself as you are. It can make it harder to see the things that lend to any self-worth issues. It can make it harder for you to see your strengths and harder to understand your weaknesses. Neptune is a co-ruler of your sixth house along with Jupiter. So it's very interesting that they're there standing together. They're both retrograde. Retrograde tends to indicate more internal lessons. And again, usually it takes getting later in life, usually in the second half of our life, before we really get to a point of fully integrating and understanding those planetary energies. Both planets are very spiritual. They rule Pisces together, and Jupiter also rules the sign of Sagittarius. So they're very spiritually minded. They're very much about taking in large amounts of things and often expressing large amount of things to the rest of the world. 9th house and 12th house natural rulers, they tend to be very focused on disseminating information, teaching, sharing, travel, a lot of that. They can also indicate feelings of isolation, especially Neptune. But when we're talking Pisces, it's got a natural 12th house energy, which can also be very isolating. So with this combination, you may find yourself when you're feeling particularly low about yourself, when your self-esteem feels dragged down, you may find yourself isolating and potentially even lashing out, because not only do we have these two conjunct, but we have a square going on to the planet of Mars in the sign of Aquarius, and they're also making an opposition to Saturn in the sign of Gemini. So those are malefic planets, Mars and Saturn. They're ones that are considered more on the damaging spectrum. I will say, though, while they can be damaging, they're also very powerful and can be used very positively. So it's more about integrating and rising to their higher energies and learning how to use them instead of allow them to cause further damage to us. Because once we attain that higher energy, we're no longer feeling them in the harsh ways, and we actually begin harnessing their strength and using it for our own purposes. So I can definitely see feelings, though, of needing to hide, potentially lashing out when you feel scrutinized. And again, any of this, because I don't know you personally, any of this that is not accurate, please just let it roll off, take it with a grain of salt. This is not me being judgmental. This is just me describing what I'm seeing in the chart. So if you find yourself in a place where you may even like be secluded, at times even hiding from the people you love, not sharing how you're emotionally feeling with the people you love, maybe even taking time alone to go and kind of nurse old wounds, because it's kind of a placement that makes me think that there can be like a retreat into oneself and that feeling of judgment, and therefore wanting to lash out at those around you to stay safe, if that makes sense. In that case, it may actually help you to be fully honest with someone, almost like an accountability partner. With that ninth house connection to Saturn, it could be someone that you view as more of a parental role in your life, that might be able to help you. So because it's an opposition, we're talking relationship here, with Saturn being across the chart. While it may be the thing that makes you feel judged, it also can be the remedy in and of itself. It can be what helps you to find your balance that you need. So it may help you if you're struggling with any feelings of negative self-worth, like bad self-talk, or struggling with overeating or addictive type drinking or behavior. Actually seeking out someone that fits an older mentor role as an accountability type partner could end up helping you find the discipline you need to get past those feelings. It might be something as simple as negative self-talk and needing someone to speak positive reminders into your life and also hold you accountable when you start talking negatively. So whatever that is, just know that there's definitely the potential that the very energy that makes you possibly doubt yourself could end up being what strengthens you and helps you overcome the self-doubt. Don't let other people's words keep you back. And actually doing very active things could help you overcome it. Squares cause us to be frustrated. They're often very challenging, but we can overcome them, especially if we have a positive mental outlook. So if you were to choose to take on a structured daily routine that involved physical activity, it could help not only physically, but your mental health as well. Just as an example of one way that that configuration could work out and end up being very positive for you in the long run. Also, Mars does just happen to conjunct your North Node, which is a kind of new energy that we need to learn and experience. It's not usually an easy energy. But if you were to solve this negative self-image or self-talk type issue, it would actually push you towards what you're meant to learn even faster in this life. And again, if you've already done it and solved it, take this with a grain of salt. Okay, so you have Sagittarius on your third house cusp. That can make for a very bright, energized child that may have talked a lot. Now you've got Moon also present in the third house, but it's in Capricorn, so that may have been squelched some. I think I mentioned that before already, that I see indicators that you may have been restricted some in your speech. You may have felt like when you were excitedly talking or got loud and noisy, that it could have been perceived as bad or noisy and uncomfortable for people around you. So you may have learned to quiet yourself down. But I wouldn't doubt that you might have a natural inclination as a child to have been very chatty, very bright, and probably a fast learner. Probably learning more from the people around you than so much, like more of an inclination to learn from humans than from textbooks. Not that Sagittarius doesn't definitely have a booky vibe, because it does, but the Saggies that I know love observing and learning from people. They watch. They don't miss anything. They're very quick to observe behaviors and patterns around them, and they do really learn from others. They're not just focused on book learning, while they're very good at that too, and often are also very good at picking up on foreign languages and things of that nature. So someone with a Sagittarius third house could have even easily picked up a foreign language if they were living in another country. I don't know if you just grew up living in one place here in the States or not, but if you'd been given that opportunity, I think you would have been quick at picking up another language at an early age. Overall, Sagittarius third house indicates the potential for being quite bright and being able to kind of cheer people up around them with their words. They're usually good at things like sales. I will say the ruler, though, of the third house, Jupiter, is not in the greatest position, so you may not have been able to express this talent. You have a natural talent for it, but you may not have been able to express it or utilize it fully. So there may have been some squelching in that arena. But you probably could be quite good at sales and talking to people and convincing people, especially with the Libra rising. You can kind of get in people's heads and have the ability to see behind their thought process, and that can lead to a very strong sales type quality. Again, I just question whether or not you're actually able to use that talent, or if it's kind of more of a hidden talent that you may not have even recognized is within you. That said, like we've talked about before, I think you have the ability to teach and express some things. So this could be something that you could take advantage of in the future, being able to use wit and humor and your ability to understand how others tick to share and express things that you've learned in your lifetime. Generally, with this third house, I would expect you to be a lifelong learner, always gleaning new information, picking up on new things, and integrating them somehow into who you are as a person, and hopefully able to also express them out to others, because you've got some trines going on and some various different things that make me think that this could be a placement where you can also take everything you learn to disseminate it out to those around you. All right, so I want to move on to the fourth house, but first we really need to discuss the moon, because the three biggest components of our personality are our sun placement, our moon placement, and our ascendant. We've already discussed your ascendant a lot. We will get to your sun soon, and I won't completely gloss over it because it does have that opposition with your moon as well. But I want to kind of dig into what it means to have a Capricorn moon in the third house. So, your moon placement usually is the personality you feel inside. So, your sun is more maybe how you're perceived. And honestly, you grow into your sun the older you get, like after 40 and beyond, you start to really feel your sun sign more. Your ascendant is definitely how people tend to see you. And depending on the person, it can be more authentic or less authentic to the person. It depends on their personal take on it. But the moon usually describes how you feel you are, who you feel to be. So, moon and Capricorn people are usually incredibly serious internally. They have deep, deep thoughts. They're often their own worst critic, like very harsh on themselves. They are the type that tends to expect way too much of themselves to the point where they're anticipating that they should be able to be perfect from the first try at darn near everything. And they judge themselves harshly if they fail at perfection from the first moment's notice. Capricorn moon people are incredibly stubborn. They usually, once they make up their mind about something, are not going to listen to anyone else's way of doing things. They know what's best, and that is the end of the story. Unfortunately, this doesn't always play out to be so, and then that can wound their ego even further, leading them to isolate even more. So the one thing that you really have to be cautious of with a Capricorn moon is that you don't allow yourself to become so stern or so isolated or so afraid of being wrong or being perceived as being wrong, that you forget you're human, that you remove yourself from the everyday life experience. Now, with Moon being in the third house in Placidus, it kind of makes the Moon, it's like it's forcing the Moon to be chattier than it wants to be. It's like you're being put into situations where you have to do more communicating than you want to. You may have to talk a lot more than you prefer to. Saturn Moon people generally only want to talk to the people that they want to talk to. They only want to be connected to the people that they feel they can trust, which is usually almost no one. And for good reason. They've often been damaged in some way and made to feel that they cannot trust. So with that third house play out, it often really makes the Capricorn moon uncomfortable. It's not a good strong placement for the moon, so you're probably going to have to work harder at becoming emotionally strengthened. I wouldn't doubt that you've struggled with a lot of internal dialogue that is very self-deprecating. But remember that this is all based on external sources and a need to feel in control, even when you aren't in control. And that's usually caused by early childhood experiences or even potentially past life stuff. If we look at your moon placement from the whole sign house system. It's actually in the fourth house, quite close to your Imam Coeli, which is another past life marker. It's the fourth house cusp. So again, it's still in Placidus. It's the fourth house cusp. It's still not directly conjunct it, but it's close to it. So you could have even brought in past life, or if not, if you don't like the thought of past lives, at least early life traumas that have led to these harsh feelings and these truly impossible standards that you've placed upon yourself. So, taking all that into consideration, I urge you to reconsider how you view yourself. I urge you to see yourself more how others see you. Others see you as a beautiful human being that has the ability to discern right from wrong and light from dark and the good in the world. Others can see and perceive you for the truth that you have, that you offer, that you walk in. They see the more true or peaceful side of you. They see the version of you that can bring beauty into situations. So with that moon placement, you have to consider whether or not the things you tell yourself are based in fact or simply based in negative programming from external sources or people that did not even realize they were creating a situation that would cause you to view yourself in this way. Also, I have to point out that there is an inconjunction, which is a 150-degree aspect. It's an aspect that is not comfortable and is not easy to integrate. It's like they don't understand each other whatsoever. And that's with the ruler of your moon, Saturn, over in the sign of Gemini. So with that, again, I've got to think there was a parent involved in this. There may have been a parent that expected way too much of you at way too early an age. Maybe even had responsibilities placed on your shoulders that you really were not mature enough to handle, or a codependent type relationship with a parent that really just expected you to somehow meet their emotional needs when that wasn't your job. So if you've absorbed someone else's emotional energy and taken it on as your own, remember that you don't need to keep carrying that burden. And indeed, the best thing you could possibly do is strengthen yourself emotionally by honing in and utilizing your Venus and Sun placements over in the sign of Cancer, which is the natural ruler for the moon. Use those, especially your Venus is strong, and that is the Venus that is ruling your whole chart. So you can utilize your ability to discern right from wrong to rationalize the self-talk, to go back and see maybe where that began and where it started. And how would you talk to one of your own children or someone else that you care about if they had gone through similar experiences? Would you be telling them that they shouldn't think about themselves in the way that you allow yourself to talk to yourself in your head? Stuff like that. Like, go back and use your intellect and your reason and your ability to weigh things out properly to strengthen your emotional self and to strengthen who you are inside, because that moon is looking for healing and desiring healing, and you do have what it takes to heal from within. Truly, it can all come from inside you. So your fourth house is ruled by the sign of Capricorn. What I already described with your moon pretty well covers the vibes of that house. Definitely Saturn is more of the harsh father kind of energy. It may not have been your father. It could have been your mother that this house is describing. But home and family environment was probably very structured, very routine based, and may have even felt cold, literally and figuratively. Now, quite interestingly, you also have Vesta in the fourth house. That is the one that looks a little bit like a censer with flames coming up out of it at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So, Vesta in the fourth house can very much denote someone that feels that they need to protect and guard the home and family. And because Vesta was actually the Vestal Virgin, she was a virgin set apart for temple duty and was considered to be the goddess of the hearth and fire and home. Because of that, one of the perfect sayings for her that we use in modern times is keep the home fires burning. Like that is a very Vesta phrase. Actually, back in ancient Greece, those that the women that would get married, they would actually bring some flame, some coals from their mother's hearth to their new home and light them in their hearth in kind of a continuance. And that was thought to be in honor of the goddess Vesta. So in practice, there was virgins that would keep the fires burning in temples that were dedicated to the goddess Vesta. And if they ever allowed the fire to go out in the temple, if they were not watching the flame and making sure that it continued to be fed, they would be punished in the most harsh of ways. So again, we come back to this theme of feeling a need to sacrifice and be responsible somehow for the home. And whether it's just early childhood or even still a theme that has continued on to into your adulthood, I see a lot of feeling of almost like responsibility, and because of the Aquarian element here, also some isolation, maybe feeling like you were solely responsible for carrying this duty of making sure that the home remained a safe place and a warm space, even though it was very cold and harsh. Not saying that your parents were automatically bad people. These may have even been feelings that you brought in from previous incarnations. But this feeling of responsibility over those in the household is repeated consistently in your chart. So taking with that, you can kind of rise to the higher sides of the energy and find it as a nurturing energy without needing to feel responsible for things that are outside of your control. So with this placement of Vesta in the fourth at 3 degrees, it's also retrograde. So a lot of internal process here. There's definitely this feeling of deprivation or isolation, like I mentioned before. It could have caused you to feel the need to, again, fight for freedom or somehow defend your family against something that you felt was a threat, be it a person or a circumstance. But Vesta tends to denote a place in our chart where we may have felt abused in some way, and where we then kind of have to fight our way out of a situation. Now, this could have been purely emotional, it could have been physical, or a past life emotion that needed to be dealt with, or a past life experience that needed to be dealt with. But with that placement and with how it is in aspect to some of your different planets in your chart, I would say that I think that that's something that you have had activated in this lifetime so that you can heal it and find a place of peace with whatever caused that emotion, or that feeling the need to fight and create security within the home. Now, that may manifest at this stage through you rising to the higher energies of Aquarius, which would be, humanitarian service. So instead of just focusing on the home and protection within the home, it might be more of like serving in some way to protect the community, charity type of acts. Or again, like I've talked about before, I see a lot of teaching potential in your chart. So it might be through you just encouraging and helping other people within your community. But there's definitely like an element of rebelliousness and needing to fight for freedom. And maybe you'll be able to help people to find that in themselves. The encourage people that may have been abused or oppressed and help them fight their way out of a situation. It may even just be psychological, but helping them get past their emotions and hurt in that arena. So sometimes in helping others to heal, we find our own healing, and there's the potential for that with this placement. From another perspective, this can also affect your health, especially when it comes to nervous conditions. Any sort of nervous system dysfunction could be created from a lack of outlet with this fifth house being Aquarius. So if you have any nervous system conditions, any nerve damage, or anything that could relate to the nervous system as a disorder, the best way to remediate that is truly through this creative expression. Somehow these energies need to be expressed in a positive way, or they basically get like stuck almost like a closed circuit within the body, and it can end up frying your nervous system. So if there's anything like that, I would pursue finding what creative expression works best for you. All right, now your sixth house is ruled by the planet Neptune, or the planet Jupiter. We've got a co-rulership going on here. We talked about this a little bit earlier. They're placed over there in your second house, or conversely, your third house with Neptune in whole sign. Now, Neptune being at 0 degrees, that makes it a very important degree. We call this an anaretic degree in astrology. It's a new energy. 0 degrees like that, it's like learning a new lesson. So with your sixth house ruler, the ruler of daily routine being Pisces, I imagine that daily routines may not have come naturally to you as a small child. It may have been a bit challenging for you to get out of bed in the morning. You might have been one of those kids that had a very active imagination and found yourself staying up at night, or you may have ended up just sleeping a lot. Like you may have been someone that really relished in sleep. All very possible things. With the Libra ascendant, I tend to think that you may have spent a lot of time in daydreaming and in exploring realms that were outside of reality, and therefore that could have presented a challenge, especially in childhood, to structure and routine that is required of us in school and home life and all these things. So with the ruler of your sixth house being at 0 degrees of Sagittarius, that just seems to lend to that energy. I imagine also looking at its aspects. So it's creating a trine aspect over to the planet Mercury in your 11th house, which is a very communicative planet and is the natural third house ruler. So that trine, it may have been very easy for you to describe these imagination type imaginative worlds. I think you're someone that probably could be quite talented at even storytelling, or coming up with like creative visions and manifesting them into this reality. Truly storytelling at its finest. At its lowest, it could be just getting lost in your own thoughts to the point where it's almost creating a blur between reality and the world that you live in your head. So again, as a kid, this can, describe something like having imaginary friends that are so real that they feel better than real life friendships. Just various different, themes of needing to make sure that you're not being drawn into illusion. I could see this being an aspect where you may have been drawn to like magic tricks and even illusionary things, just to wow and dazzle people. It might be something that you could be good at even now, being able to kind of create and tell stories. Again, very comedian-like even. Wit, humor, ability to keep people guessing. Aspects like that. So with the sixth house, though, that does present some challenges because the sixth house is, routines, like we talked about. Now, if you've already accomplished figuring that out, I mean, you probably did, being in the military, considering things are so regimented. You've probably solved the lesson of being able to keep a routine, but I imagine that this still could be a struggle throughout your life of maintaining balance between this desire to be able to pick up and change routine and not be stuck in something, and also like the frustration of feeling the need to structure things. I do see that you have a partile sextile going on between Saturn, which is what creates structure for us, and it is your fourth and fifth house ruler. You've got that as a partile, which means an exact sextile to Mercury over there. So we're getting some energies here. And again, it's not quite partile, but it is definitely a strong opposition to Neptune. So I imagine that structure was hard for you. A parent probably encouraged structure, maybe in less positive ways. But your Mercury was probably somehow assistive to you in that process. So it may have come through. Let's see, Mercury rules your ninth house and also your 12th house. You may have had some teachers that might have helped you to find structure and encouraged you in more positive ways. Or it might just be that you were able to harness your own past life experience and your own willpower through moving through the education system. You might have been able to kind of force yourself into a place where you were a little bit more organized. That said, sixth house Pisces generally doesn't love being forced into structure and enjoys being able to be a little bit loosey-goosey and have some freedoms to their daily routine. So if you can find ways to balance that in healthy ways now as an adult, you're probably going to find more freedom and fulfillment than you would if you just force yourself into whatever stoic roles have been pressed upon you in previous times. One way that you might be able to also work this out and use these energies positively now is through daily spiritual practice of some sort. Maybe, I mean, for some people, this could express as like Bible study. For others, it could express as daily meditations. Or for others still, it might be a study into metaphysical arts. Or, I mean, Pisces also rules things like Hollywood, again, illusion, special effects, things of that nature. So it can rule things as zany as psychics and as religious as pastors, but it can also fall into the realm of creativity and art. Somehow it can even be talking about taking time to create something that is artsy on a daily basis, taking time for creation, using your fifth house creative energies to express in the sixth house, and bringing something in each day that helps you to feel that creative flow.